How are you?
I'm good, my man. How are you?
Good. All right. I've got a bit of man flu, so but I'm getting there.
Sweet. So where are you at right now? Where in the world are you at?
I'm in the UK.
Oh, sweet.
Mm.
I just it's funny. I was just talking about the UK because the car that I first got after I got my first record deal, I went and I bought my first nice car. And I
All
bought a
right.
Land Rover,
Ah,
right?
cool.
And I loved it, and I still have it. So that
Mm.
was back in 2001 or 2002 when I got it, and I still have it. And then I just got a new car, and I got a Mini Cooper. So I seem to like the British
Yeah.
made
Yeah. Well, big
cars. I
cars,
don't
aren't they? They're always
know.
better. Um,
Awesome. Well,
Thanks for taking
thanks
some
for
time
having me,
out,
by
mate.
the way.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you. Privilege. Like I said, I'm pretty big fan. As a teen, I used to really enjoy too. So this is pretty cool.
Sweet.
Um,
Nice.
so basically, obviously, we're here to talk about your new single and stuff after it. But if you could just give us a brief, just walking sort of get a bit of padding out on like the backstory of the band. So could you just like give us a brief history on how the band first formed?
Well, the band first formed here in Los Angeles in, God, what was it? 99. And the funny part of the story, or the ironic part of the story, is that I wasn't even a singer. I was a guitar player that answered an ad for a band that was looking for a singer. If that makes any kind of sense at all.
Yeah.
And I had been in bands as an aspiring guitar player for so many years, and we can never find the right singer. And I think at that moment I had just decided, why not just give it a shot myself? And so that's sort of how I came into all this. So really, Earshot is the very first band that I ever sang in, or sang in a band as a singer. So that was the first kind of, you know, I guess, weird part of the story, was that I was never even a singer to begin with. We got noticed pretty quickly. We had a one song demo of a song called My Time, which was the first song I ever recorded as a singer. I had no idea what I was doing. I remember dreading going into the recording studio because no one knew that I'd never been a singer before. So was just, I just did my best, and I winged it, and got lucky. And that sparked a bunch of label interest. And next thing you know, we're doing showcases and meeting with labels and managers and publishers and attorneys, and here we are. Our first record came out on Warner Brothers Records, which is where we ended up signing. We put out Letting Go. We had Getaway off of that album. That single did really amazing for us. I mean, it really set us up for the next record. Deep down, that you should have never kept inside. How much must I live through just to get away? All this tension and so alive. Which, the one we were talking about earlier, too. And that's where Wait came from. And Wait, still to this day, just, I feel like in some ways that song is even more popular today than it was when it first came out. I mean, I watch these things on the streaming platforms on the back end of it, so I can see what's happening with it. And it's just amazing that all this time later, it's getting, almost 1 million streams a month. I'm dying to live in a world I don't belong. I can't wait for someone to hear me, and wait for someone to touch me, and wait for ever to be digital. Yeah, forever alone. I mean, that's insane. And it's just, we're so grateful that we were able to write something that connected with people on such a visceral level, and it's still just rolling strong like a freight train. After that record, we took a little bit of a break. We parted ways with Warner Brothers, and we did a small record deal with um, a label that my manager at the time uh, put together with Universal Music Group, and we put out The Silver Lining. Um, we had Misunderstood was the single on that record. But we had a bit of a falling out before the release of that record. So the record didn't get a whole lot of push and promotion. And quite honestly, it's not my favorite record. It was a weird time for me artistically, creatively, and personally. I just don't feel like it was my personal best.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. I did a. So basically, yeah, I saw Limp Bizkit a couple weeks. This is a random tangent, this, but I went to see Limp Bizkit a couple weeks ago, and on the drive back home, I put 2 on, and I have like phases where I won't listen to any Earshot stuff for a while, and I'll go back to it and I'll go, God damn, that album is so good. So I'd never heard The Silver Lining till only recently, and it's a solid record. But what are you going for? Were you going for like sort of a bluesy sort of take to your sound? Because there's elements in it where you do retain the sound, but like you're trying to do something different at the same time.
Yeah, it was. I think there's a lot of different reasons why that record sounded almost a bit of a departure from Two and even Letting Go. And I think the first part of the reason is that I had brand new members in the band, right? So now we have different creative influences happening on top of everything else. And I think I just wasn't, at that point, I'd gone through so much on the fallout from being on Warner Brothers and transitioning, to having no record deal and then to having another record deal. I remember being on a really, what seemingly felt like an emotional roller coaster. This is like our job. So it's kind of like when you lose your job and you go, fuck, how am I going to pay the bills? It's all the same things that happen.
Yeah.
Except I guess the slight nuance would be, the work that I do is my art. So, I took some things personally, obviously, like I think we often do anytime we get let go from a job and we feel like we're doing a really good job, we take that person. So times that, magnify that by 10 when it's, your art, that they go, we don't see a partnership anymore with this, so we're going to move on. And then, so dealing with that, and then a bunch of personal stuff that I was also dealing with. I had a really good friend of mine that passed away unexpectedly. So it's just a really weird time. When I hear that record, I actually hear so much more potential with it. It just wasn't fully fleshed out of a record.
Some heavy shit on there, like there's some heavy shit on there.
There is. It's just very it's very scattered. It's a very scattered record. There's no continuity to it. It's very disjointed, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
It feels rushed to me creatively.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's rushed. I definitely feel like there's ideas that weren't properly didn't properly blossom, but I think it's still a solid record. Like, I think Two's obviously like I feel like your best one, and Letting Go's got some really good songs on it. And like I said, Silver Lining is still a really good album. But it's just I just wasn't sure if there was a few ideas you were trying out just for experimenting, really.
Yeah, it was just really. I mean, as I think about it, our very first record, Letting Go, we were focused, but we were new to the game. We were on a big label. We were working with a A-list producer. We were in these beautiful recording studios, but we were focused and we showed up, but we didn't really have. I don't feel like we really fully had our identity sonically yet fully created, but the songs on that record were important because it really paved the way for the second record when we sort of found our identity sonically.
100%.
And we were also laser focused on that record. I mean, super laser focused. And I think that's why that record is so special, and people love that record. They can hear it, they can feel it. And then you get to the Silver Lining and you can hear how the focus wasn't there. The identity was kind of scattered. A lot of different things happened with it. But like you said, it came out good, but it's not our best effort. What's ironic to me is I get requests all the time of people asking, where that record is on Spotify and Apple Music, because it's not there at the moment. We're trying to get it back on there. The label that it came out on is defunct, so we're trying to go through all the proper channels to get it back up again. But I just kind of chuckle every time I get a request, because I think to myself, but it's not really our best record. But okay, right.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I looked on Spotify, wasn't I? I had to listen to it on Bandcamp. I just wasn't sure. A lot of bands that I talk to, if there's an album that's not on there, it tends to just be like label, something to do with a label or something in it. So
yep, 100%.
So it's when I was looking into the band, I stumbled across. I never even thought of this. Just you mentioning there about 2 being like a fully realized sound. There was a lot of comparisons to you guys and Tool, and that really baffled me when I first heard that. And then when I listened to Letting Go recently, there is similarities to it, but I think it's a very unfair comparison. I feel like the reason why, if anyone was to think that, it's more that you and Maynard have a very similar sort of voice. But do you? Is a Tool an influence to
you? It's funny. I've had this conversation just the other day with a very good friend of mine, and back in the early '90s when they came out, when Undertow came out, I fucking loved that record, as did millions of people. Like, it was just such a raw, gritty, dark, but dark in a different way than everything that was happening at that time.
Yeah.
The sound, the guitar sounds were just really, they weren't, back then it was all these big 80s, reverb on everything. And this was just really dry, like in your face, just really intimate right there. And in those days, that record rarely came out of my player, along with all the other stuff I was listening to: Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nine Inch Nails. I mean, that was, what a time for music that was. And so that was one of the CDs that was in there, and we were all listening to it. It was new. No one was doing what Tool was doing the way they were doing it at that time. And so cut to, moving forward throughout the years, they sort of started to lose me, not because I didn't like the band. It became a commitment to listen because the length of the songs and all the different parts. And I'm more of a song guy. I like listening to stuff that's a little easier and don't have to think as much at times, but I appreciate what they do. A lot of the stuff they do is really intricate. So I would say that, were they an influence? I mean, their early records probably had as much influence on me as just as much as the other stuff that I was listening to back then. I think if you really listen to the body of work, that I've created, you'll hear all of those things I just mentioned, all of those bands, and that's a normal part of, I think, just evolution. Every band, every artist is influenced by what they were listening to. Just like, I like to metaphorically compare it to food. If we eat healthy, we're generally pretty healthy. If we eat like crap, then we feel like crap and we look like crap. So it's the same thing. We kind of are what we eat, and we are what we hear, and subliminally some of these things start to creep through. Back to the comparison, I thought when I look at it from an outside perspective, I think that the first record, I can definitely see some moments where, ooh, that's a very Tool sounding inspired moment. On the 2 record, I don't get it at all. Like,
No.
it's I mean, I think at that point it just became a conversation topic that people just like to dredge up. But I was never offended by the comparison. I think at the beginning I kind of, in the early days, was a little off put by it, only because, as an artist, we want to be identified as our own being, right? And so it just became such a focal point at that time, and I was just so resistant to the fact that what people were actually doing was they were complimenting, the ability. It wasn't a dig so much, and some people do mean it as such, but by and large, most people mean it as a compliment. And so it took me a while to understand and accept that. But listen, I mean, I remember listening to Stone Temple Pilots for the first time and thinking it was Pearl Jam. And they went through the same thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it happens. You can't help influence. We're all a product of our predecessors before us, and luckily, the comparisons that we draw from time to time are bands that we love and feel are just as influential and iconic as everybody else does.
Yeah, I definitely feel it's an unfair comparison. I really feel it's more incidental. I just think that you and me and I just have very similar voices, and definitely with 2. I just don't see how you could even compare it. There's elements with the way you approach your vocals on Letting Go where I can kind of hear it, but I don't even like anything after 2 and onwards. I just can't hear it. So, but like you say, it's not a bad thing.
Also, since we were talking, you asked me earlier about, what changed on The Silver Lining that made it such a different sounding record.
Yeah.
As we're talking about this, it also has occurred to me that on the first record was also a different group of guys on the first record than there was in the second record.
Yeah.
And so the bass player that we had in the beginning of the band on Letting Go, who wrote most of the songs musically on that record, he was a big Helmet, Tool, like he was really Bauhaus, like he was really heavy into those bands at the time. So absolutely there was probably from his end, again, subliminally, some of this influence of sounds that he preferred, that he liked and loved, and it just coincidentally so happens that at times, my voice can seem similar, I think, to a lot of different things, quite honestly. If we're talking about singers that I just love, I feel like really seep through more than anything. I mean, Scott Weiland's a big one. Chris Cornell's a big one. Uh, Ed from Alive is huge. Like, I'm one of the biggest Live fans. Like, I still listen to that record, or records, I should say, all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I would say I'm surprised nobody has said, God, he sounds just like the guy from Live.
The outside by the river used to be so calm, used to be so sane. I rushed the ladies' room, took the water from the toilet, washed her feet and blessed her name. More peace. It's such a dirty habit.
I mean that band, it's just so musical, and I just, again, not that I'm ever trying to sound like it, but if I listen to my natural voice, again, I think there's just you could draw a lot of similarities to a lot of different artists out there.
Yeah.
Tool just happens to be the one that we get. I think just because we're a heavier band.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably it.
Yeah. So Silver Lining, and then I mean, a 4-year gap's it's pretty normal for a lot of bands, but then obviously after Silver Lining you get to Aftermath. You're looking at 7 years there. And obviously now we're looking at, well, if from album to album, we're looking at 17 years. So what happened in between Silver Lining and Aftermath, and then to where we are now?
So Aftermath was really just a collection of songs that we'd written over the process of writing Letting Go and Two and The Silver Lining, that were just kind of sitting around in the studio, and I just decided, let's just finish it and just put it out. That's why that EP sounds really unfinished. But there's a couple of great tracks on that EP that I like. Let Me is that's one that gets a lot of streams, surprisingly.
So let me hurt you like you hurt me. Let me wrong you like you wronged me. Let me hate you like I want to. Let me hurt you like you hurt me.
I think it's because that's the most similar song that sonically has our signature that our fans love from us.
Yeah.
But that was just really a collection of some songs that just were laying around, and just decided to put them out there. And again, that was after parting ways with not just the label that we were on for The Silver Lining, but also parting ways with my longtime manager.
Right.
So just a lot of weird transition life stuff happening, and I just wasn't really inspired either as an artist. I didn't like the music ideas that we were coming up with, and haven't for many years up until recently, in the last 3 or 4 years or so. And again, that's required bringing in yet a new wave of people into the band that have changed that dynamic, and together we've been able to create some music that's really lit a fire in me. And I think when people hear this whole new album that we're getting ready to put out, I think people are really viscerally going to be able to hear and feel like, whoa, there's some fucking shit here. Wow. And I'm so excited for people to hear it. Super excited.
We might as well just segue into that then. So the new track is awesome. And you are 100% right that there is like, this is, for me personally, I think Where We Use, like the best song you've done since 2. It's a really, really strong song. And you're right, like there's an energy that comes from here that's like, one thing I took from that song was your vocal approach. It sounds really different to anything you've done in the past. It sounds really good. So was that an intention that you had to approach that differently vocally?
I don't think it was intentional. I think it was just automatic.
Right.
When I'm writing lyrics to music, I'm sort of listening internally, like what it's making me feel, like what's it saying, like what do I want to answer to this music that I'm hearing, and I wrote that riff. I just got a new amp, and I was loving the sound of it. I was in my studio and I was playing with it. I'm like, wow, this sounds so fucking good and heavy, and I just started playing this riff, and then I recorded it, and I just listened back to it, and I was like, man, this was just me testing this amp, but I'm feeling something here, and it just sort of spilled out. And then once I took it to the rest of the guys and we started fleshing it out, it is when it really got unlocked, and everything just started just retching out of me, like, wow. And it's just one of those songs. A lot of the songs on this new album came very naturally and very organically, and most of them pretty easy. Also, the approach, I think, was part of the equation. Me deciding to go back to the way that I used to write on the first 2 records, which was just conscious stream of thought. Like, here it is. Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm feeling right now. And I don't care how I say it or how it sounds. I'm just going to put it out there, and here it is. And the other part of that equation is the guys in the band. We're on the same page creatively. We're trying to do the things that we know that we're good at doing, while also trying to innovate it a little bit and add something, little new things, little Easter eggs to it still, that, you know, that people may not necessarily notice or recognize, but they're hearing it and they don't realize that they're hearing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big difference on this record versus really any of the records before this. I'm with you. Like, 2 was probably my personal favorite. I mean, the first record is always kind of like your first love, right?
Yeah.
And there's some great songs on that. But like I said, we didn't really know what we were doing. You know, we kind of just were going along with and learning, and 2 came along and we knew a little something. And on this new album, we come with a lot of experience, a lot of background. We come with knowing what our identity is. We come with not being afraid to just go where we go with things, and trusting that it's going to be okay. It's going to be good. And that's what we did differently on this record than the other ones. And I think for that reason, this record by far and away tops my most favorite record that we've done, which is 2. Like, it's really, objectively speaking, like, this is a record that if I hadn't heard it a million times already myself, I would listen to a million times.
Yeah.
It's that kind of record that just hits you deep, and it's catchy, and it's just got all of the elements, I feel like, that for me as a fan of music that I looked for and searched for, and those records, as we know, are few far in between.
There's a number of things well, like I said, I'm really excited for this record. Really excited to hear it. But there's two things that I think really make me excited. The first thing is obviously you got Aaron Fink in the band, and he is. I don't mind the new Breaker Benjamin stuff, but the original lineup's where my heart is. So when I read that he joins Earshot, I thought it was a really cool fit. And I can hear. I'm not sure how much involvement he had with the writing on this, but I can hear a lot of his style on it. So how much involvement did the other guys have? So did you mainly write all the songs and they sort of shape it, or did you also muck in?
This record was pretty equally drawn up by all of us, with the exception of our drummer. Mikey, he doesn't really write a whole lot. I mean, obviously he comes up with his drum parts, the way he plays them, and we also have input, but by and large, it was Aaron, myself had obviously the largest hand in it, and John, our bass player, has, I think, a couple or a few songs that he started off as well that are some of my favorite songs. I mean, so yeah, I mean, all of this, you're gonna hear the fingerprints of myself and Aaron all over it, and it's just, I met Aaron back in 2004 when we were doing we had a string of sorry, one second.
Yep.
We had a string of dates with Breaking Benjamin back in 2004, and me and Aaron became fast friends. We were, every day first thing in the afternoon, whenever we got up and were awake and had our coffee and whatever, we'd, be hanging out, and we'd just hang out all day long until one of our bands had to play. And then when we were done, we'd come right back and keep hanging out, and we'd hang out till, the buses left at 2 or 3 in the morning, and we would just be listening. We'd pass the iPod back and forth, playing, check this song, you heard this, check this out, this, and then lamenting on things. And like, we would get excited listening and sharing these songs. Like, yeah, I know that, or, oh, I've never heard that, but that's awesome. And just talking music and talking, some of the artists that were influential to us. And I remember one of the moments Aaron saying to me, he said, what I really love about your band that's different than mine is that all you do is sing. You're a traditional front man. You're not playing guitar. You're not doing any of that. Like I miss that in a way, and I admire that. And cut to all these years later, we started talking again in 2018, and not that we ever stopped talking. We just got busy, and once in a while, one of us would send a text every once just to say, hey, or Merry Christmas or whatever. But he had reached out to me in 2018, I think it was, or early 2019. He was working on a solo record of his, and he'd sent me a text to ask if I would be interested in maybe singing on one of the songs. And of course I said, sure, send it over. I'll take a listen to it. And at that time, we had a couple of offers that had come out of nowhere to do a couple of shows and have a band together or anything. And I had kind of been I'd talked to Mikey, who's our current drummer. He expressed interest in, maybe doing that if I decided to do that. And then a friend of mine, Andy, who was the guitar player for a couple of years when we reactivated also. And then Aaron sent that text and I went, if it's ever going to happen, this would be a great time to do it, because this is literally like starting a brand new band again, albeit, with there's a little name recognition and brand recognition there to start from, but it's like starting over again. And this would be a great opportunity for us to start to work together and not feel like it's not my home, it's more your home. Like, this is a complete reset of this band. And so when I called him and asked him about, how he felt about doing these couple of shows, he didn't hesitate. He's like, I'm in. And we planned to make this record in 2020, and then obviously COVID hit. So that put the kibosh on that, and we ended up just remotely recording some singles and putting them out. We did Uninvited, which I feel like came out really, really great.
Yeah, good song.
And we put out Been a Long Time, which was, more of a rock track, and we were starting to inch closer, back to our roots. And then Unraveling, we did Unraveling, which kind of, to me, reminded me of something that would have came off of Letting Go. It's a good song, heavy, nice chorus, kind of chaotic sounding, had that chaotic vibe. So definitely something that would have come off our first album. And then finally we were able to all get together and start recording this album. We had all these song ideas that we had been, throwing back and forth. And we flew out to Florida to our drummer's house. He's got a studio there, and we holed up there for 10 or 12 days and just started recording songs and fleshing them out, seeing which ones, were good to continue moving forward with, which ones we were going to throw in the filing cabinet, and which ones we were going to burn. And I came back. Originally, we had intended for Aaron and I to produce this record, and he got busy. I got really busy, super unfocused. And that's when I had, after having a discussion with a good friend of mine who's a coach for me. I do coaching as well. I'm really into self-development, so that's a whole nother conversation. But I was on a call and I realized during the call that I'm so fucking scattered and unfocused right now. Like, this record's never going to get finished if it's up to me, just because I'm just so all over the place and unfocused. So I called old friend Johnny.K, who produced our second record. And we hadn't talked in a few years, but I called him up, and luckily I'm still on his short list, where I get my call answered. And we caught up, and I said, hey man, I got this record. I'd like to send it over to you. I need help finishing this. And I sent it over to him. I also met with Bob Marlette, who's also a great producer, a great friend of mine. Johnny.K was the most excited about it and the most passionate about it. And so that was that. We worked up a deal. We flew out to Nashville and finished the record. And we're happy with it. We're really, really excited with it. And he understood what our strengths were and what we were good at doing. And so he caused us to focus on those things and encouraged being experimental, but set some parameters to it.
Yeah.
So that we didn't end up with another Silver Lining or an EP like the Aftermath, like keeping it focused on doing what we do best doing. And it worked.
Yeah. Cool. Super excited, mate. I am genuinely excited. This is something like, so Where Were You stands out a mile from most contemporary rock bands today, and it's for the very reason is the production. Now, so I listened to Daughtry's EP last year, really good album, EP, great songs, but it has a lot of modern rock bands have this overproduced, like, electronic sound to it. So even though Dodger's EP was great, I listened to Disturbed's new single this year, which is also really good, but the two sounds the same. And there's a lot, like most bands, there's just like this homogeneousness to everything because it all sounds the same. So were you guys conscious of that, and you wanted to approach that song and the rest of the album with a more, it's got like a, not in a detrimental way, it's in a positive, like you're taking the sound to be like how rock bands used to sound 20 years ago. So is that what you were going for?
Yeah, we wanted a more, well, we always strived to create records that emulated the experience of seeing us live. Right? So one of the compliments we've always gotten is how great we sound live, and how much like the record we sound live, and in most instances sound even better, which is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Because like the 2 record sounds amazing. So when people go, dude, you sounded even better than the record, which how do you do that? So we try to make records with, how is this going to translate live? Like we don't want to do things that we can't do in real life, because what happens is people are disappointed. And plus we take pride in the fact, you know, that what you hear is what you get. Like we can do what you're hearing. And I'm not saying that a lot of bands can't do that. I know Disturbed can, I know Daughtry can.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of bands also that can't and don't, and that's why you end up with these records that are sort of disjointed. You know, it's funny. Me and Johnny.K were just the other day talking about what you're talking about, and how this record sounds sonically, production-wise, sounds different than a lot of the records, you know, that we hear from smaller bands, and even from some of the bigger bands. There's that sound, that really mechanical, like all the drums sound the same, all the guitars sound this, like everything's the same. And he had a really great thought on why that happened. And it's not because people don't appreciate the sound of a natural sounding band that can get guitars sounding naturally really heavy and drums sounding really big and heavy. It's that a transition happened when labels started to shrink and budgets started to shrink, and people had to figure out how to make records with almost no budget to make a record. Like the days of hiring a producer were out of the question because it wasn't the budget. So people had to figure out, how do I make a record in my bedroom, right? And this is where we've gotten to. Like, so a lot of these sounds that we're hearing are all a lot of emulations of guitar cabinets and guitars, and they just have that film to it. I can't describe it really in layman's terms, but
Sucks the
from a
soul
musician
out of it.
standpoint,
I feel like it sucks the soul out of the sound.
in some cases, I suppose it could, but I think at the end of the day, it still comes down to, is the song good?
Yeah.
Is it connecting with people?
Yeah.
Right? Like there have been a lot of recordings that didn't sound great, that just sound amazing. I mean, if you listen to, you know, some old Led Zeppelin records, for crying out, like the production quality was nowhere where it is today, but those songs were so good that it just shines through all of that.
Yeah.
So I still believe it's still about the song, but I think the production and the sound and the tone of things also, I would like to believe anyway, still carries a lot of weight with someone who's listening. It creates an experience that's unique.
Yeah.
There's nothing really unique when you're listening to the same sound in every song from one band to the next. There's nothing unique. All you have is the song is the only unique thing. But I think it creates a whole other level of experience when you not only have a different song, but you have a different sounding kind of song. And I think that's what we always have aspired to do. And we did that here. I mean, we spent a nice chunk of money making this record.
You can tell.
It's and that's why a lot of bands don't do it. They can't afford that. I mean, we had to forego some like to do's, like to have things, to spend to make this record, because it's not cheap. And but nothing ever good is. I mean, it takes a commitment. It's like investing in your business. You have to be willing to risk investing everything you have if you really believe in the business that you're building. You have to take that risk. Otherwise, you never really get to the mountaintop. So we put our money where our mouth is on this, and we would like to believe that when people hear the whole record, that they're just going to be completely blown away and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So is there a release date for this new album, or is it still tentative?
So it's definitely going to come out in the fall. We're narrowing it down by the days and weeks. We just did a phone call the other day. We narrowed it down to September, and now we're going to narrow it down to a date.
Cool.
We have a smattering of shows over the next few months. We'll probably maybe do some more in the fall, but when we're really going to hit the road hard is next year. And that's why we decided to release this later in this year, so that we could have time or not let too much time pass between the release of this record and us being able to be out there and touring behind it. We didn't want to put it out now and then we're not even out there for 10 months. It just kind of seemed like we were setting it up to die on the vine doing it that way. So September, maybe even early October, but somewhere in there is when it's going to come out. I'm actually flying to Nashville this next week. We have a few more songs to finish mixing, and then it's done. So we'll have everything. We're starting to work on album artwork. I think we're just about to decide on a title. That's gone back and forth a bunch. So we're getting really, really close, but we're just so excited at the response that we've gotten from Where Were You? And what's so mind-blowing about it is, because we do have these shows, as I mentioned. Aaron had said to me, he said, well, the record's not going to come out before these shows, but can we at least put out a song, or something like, and so we decided that let's pick a song that's a great song, but it's not the single. And so we picked that song, and it's just, It's amazing that people love it. Like, if people are having this kind of reaction to this song, like I literally cannot wait to see what the reaction is going to be when they hear the rest of this record. Like, it's just not that the song is bad. It's not these other songs just have so many other cool moving parts to them. I would say, this one's the easiest one to listen to.
Sort of song
the other ones
that you would listen to while you listen to the whole album, rather than it being like a jump out, stand out single sort of song.
Right, but yet it is.
Yeah,
it is
stand out
because well, mainly because it's been so long since we've put anything out, but also I think it was a surprise to a lot of people. You know, I read a lot of comments like, you know, they didn't know we were still around or active. So people, you know, there's a lot of that conversation. So, you know, we wanted to use that song to sort of wake people back up again and wake our fans back up that may have thought, you know, that we went away forever. And this was, I think, the perfect song because it's familiar, you know, to fans of ours. It's a familiar sound.
Yeah.
And when people hear the record, they're going to still hear that familiar sound, but they're going to hear a whole different energy and some different things. And like you said, you know, a big part of that is just the collaboration between Aaron and I, you know, joining our creative minds together, and that's created that. So it's really interesting and familiar and new at the same time. It's just really such a unique record. And I know I've said it a million times. I probably sound like a broken record, no pun intended. But we're so excited for people to get this, to hear this record in its entirety and listen to the reaction about that.
It's definitely a win-win for people like me who grew up on bands like Earshot and Breaking Benjamin. Like the idea of you and Aaron working together in one band is awesome because you're getting two different sounds coming together. It's great. I've just got a couple more questions.
Sure.
One of them is, so growing up, one of the main sources of finding out getting new music was through video games. So like games like Burnout and Tony Hawk's and Madden, which was actually how I found Earshot, because Wait was on Madden 2005. So how did that opportunity come about?
So that came about through one of the executives at EA Sports. Just happened to be a big Earshot fan, and he got an early preview of, I think, the whole record. And Wait, we already knew was going to be the lead single coming out on that record. And he just loved the song. And so he called the label and said, you know, can we use this? And of course, I'm a huge Madden fan myself. So it's like, do you need to call to ask me this question? But we went down to EA Sports. They gave us a tour and we got to preview the video game, and it was such a great opportunity. It's always exciting when you get asked to be a part of something that you're such a fan of yourself. And then also they informed us that they were going to do a version of it with the DOC from NWA. And again, like, huge fan. I grew up listening to NWA all through, you know, middle school, high school. Like, it was just sort of for me, it was a little moment of, you know, the dreams can come true type of thing. Like, if you would have asked me that when I was in high school that this was going to happen, I would have told you were nuts. But so it was one of those moments.
Yeah, that it's funny you bring up the DOC Earshot remix, because I was going to ask you if you'd heard it, and surprisingly, you can't. Well, maybe I'm not looking hard enough, but I can't find it anywhere. The only place you can hear that song is on YouTube, and it's such a great interpretation. It grabs both of those songs and picks the best elements from it. Because when it kicks into the Earshot riff, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think I might have a copy of it that they sent to me when they got it back from them. I should, because you're right. The only place it exists is if you do a YouTube search. And
yeah, it's just disappointing. It's a shame, real shame.
Yeah.
So last question, which, including the new album, which was the most difficult album for you to write?
I'd have to say The Silver Lining was the hardest one to write. Just because I wasn't, as I talked about earlier, I just wasn't in the right place to make that record. Now, I went back and forth between that and two. Johnny K, one of the things that I love about him, there are many things I love about him, but one of the things that I love about him the most is he loves to experiment with things. And I do too. And we would spend, we spent weeks and months like, let's try this amp with this cabinet. Okay, now let's change the chord and see if anything changes. And I mean, just ridiculous things, right? And we had so much fun doing that, and we got into it. And that's why that record took a long time to make. It wasn't really because of the songs or anything that was going wrong. It's just we were just experimenting. We were like kids, like two kids that found each other and were like, oh, you'd like to do that too? All right, well, let's try this. Let's try that. And everybody was probably bored to tears, but we were like, well, this is interesting. Like, this is why we love to do this. We love trying different things and seeing what kind of noise comes out of it. If you plug something you're not supposed to plug in there and plug it over here, and that we just, so I went back and forth. It was hard because we were after month 3 or 4, we were supposed to only take a month to record that record. We ended up taking 3 or 4, and the label was starting to bug out and get worried, and we tried to assure them that everything was fine, but that got hard dealing with that. But other than that, it was a great record to make, and that's probably where I learned the most about songwriting and studio production and experimenting and what different things do. So yeah, The Silver Lining was the hardest one.
Yeah. So would you say that the new album was pretty stress-free to make? Like creatively, just, I know you said it came out pretty easy, but was the entire record just like that? Just
the creation of it was easy. You know, I was going through some pretty rough personal things during the making or the writing of that record, I should say, and you're hearing that all over this record. You're almost hearing a diary, play-by-play, like really deep, you know, and you're hearing thoughts and you're hearing my ideas about it and you're hearing what I'm experiencing. So that was the hard part of it, but it was also what helped make this record what I think is going to be so relatable to it, is because I'm talking about things and feelings and thoughts and emotions that people go, yeah, I get that. I've been there. I'm there now. And I think, you know, they say the universe has its way of timing. This is the absolute perfect time for this record, for its relatability and all of those things. Like, it's just, it's so hard in that regard. It was hard because I was in the midst of all of these different difficult emotions that I was going through at the time. And yes, relationships are sometimes the devolving of those can be an asset, and that's sort of luckily what happened. This record. So thank you.
Well, that's great, mate. Have you got anything else to add? Anything you want to tell anyone?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Just saying, is there anything else you want to say to the fans, or anything that needs to be said?
The only thing that I want to say to fans listening and watching this is thank you. You know, thank you for you know, keeping us this far, and being this patient. And I know it's a long time to hang in there and wait. And so I'm grateful and thankful that the people that are listening to it are as excited and giving it a chance, and new fans as well. I'm grateful that the people, the old school fans have stuck around, and I mean, they're sharing stuff like crazy and commenting, and they're helping new fans find us.
Yeah.
We're just grateful for all of it, and we're grateful that that we've had such so far a very warm welcome back with this, and the response has been great, and the encouragement, all of those things. So I would say thank you.
Well, I wish all the success for you guys. The new single sounds amazing. I've no doubt the rest of the album will sound amazing. I always ask bands this that don't live in the UK: will you ever tour the UK?
I believe that we will. I don't know when, but it's on my list of gotta do in this lifetime.
Oh, so you've never done it before then?
We've never done Europe at all.
Oh, wow.
And ironically, neither is Aaron, which is
really
odd.
Spending like flying, did he?
Yeah, he doesn't like flying. So we're both chomping at the bit to get out in Europe and experience, fans in those parts. We've heard a lot of great things from, our friends that are in bands that have toured there, and so it's on our list of things to do.
Oh, well, cool. If you come to the UK, I'll definitely catch you. Good to see you.
I'd be disappointed if you weren't.
Well, thanks a lot, Wil. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to see us. There's a few albums looking forward to this year, but this one in particular, I can
love it.
There's certain new bands that when bands release singles, you get like a feeling for when something's gonna pop, and I can feel this being a big bang. So I can't wait.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it, my man.